Greg Carsillo, and I have the pleasure of talking now with Joe Mad, who, of course, many of you may remember him from his run on Uncanny X-Men. But now he has an awesome video game coming out called Darksiders. Comes out in January 2010, I believe, is the early date.
Right after Christmas, yeah.
All right, very cool. But the first thing I want to ask is that because we know you from your run on Uncanny X-Men, like I said, is what made you want to transition from comic books into video games?
I've always loved games. I've always loved comics too, but games. I've been playing since I was little. I had the Atari 2600, like every other '80s kid, and Commodore 64. I had an Amiga, so I played on PC. I played on consoles, and it was one of those things where I didn't really think about. It's kind of like you love watching movies, but you don't necessarily think about everything that goes into making one or who works on them. And games was kind of the same way. I played them all the time. I didn't really think of it as a job or something I could get into. And I broke into comics and I had a successful thing going there. So I never even really thought about getting into games. If I had that opportunity, I probably would have. And oddly enough, it was my comics work that got me the opportunities that I have in the game industry. So, but over time, working in comics, I'd meet people that were like, "Hey, I'm a fan of your work," and they'd work at like game studios, movie studios like Disney, and they would always be like, "Oh, you should come work here," blah blah. Talk to my art director, and I was always busy. But at some point, I'd been doing comics so long, I just felt like if I really wanted to break into games, I could probably do it. I felt like I had that window, and so I just took it. And I know it's very sad for comics fans, but it was just something I had to do creatively.
Cool. Now we talked about Darksiders, of course. It's basically the end of the world is coming about. You get to take over as one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Can you give us a little more details about the plot?
Yeah, basically what happens is as soon as the game starts, angels and demons appear on Earth and start wiping out humanity. They're having a war. It's called the End War. And basically one of the horsemen shows up there. He's not sure why he's there, and everyone is kind of surprised to see him. So it basically gets pinned on him that he brought about Earth's destruction and caused the apocalypse before it was meant to happen, because it wasn't time for this to happen on Earth yet. And so he gets imprisoned and stripped of his powers for 100 years. The other horsemen are nowhere to be found, and he's given a chance to go back 100 years later and sort of prove his innocence and try and get to the bottom of what actually happened and if the other horsemen were involved in some way and where they are, because at this point he's just like been completely separated. And so you play as War, and part of the story is just uncovering what really happened, obviously getting your powers back, finding Ruin, who's your steed. So the later parts of the game take place on horseback, and you'll kill tons of angels, tons of demons. Pretty much, the horsemen are caught right in the middle between heaven and hell. They're kind of agents of balance and maintaining this balance. So you may team up with demons one minute, you may be killing angels another, or helping angels. So the story takes you all over the place, and it really enforces this thing. Like, the horsemen don't take sides. They're just kind of like, there to do their job. And the first game really focuses on war.
So there's going to be possibly more games in the future?
That's our hope. I mean, obviously the first game has to kick ass, do really well, and we'd love nothing more than to do the sequel.
Now you mentioned obviously you're playing as War, so War's got to have some pretty awesome weapons. What do you think going to see in ways to destroy all these zombies and not zombies but demons and angels that he's going to be taking on?
So War's so strong right off the bat. Like the smaller creatures, we call them quick kills. You just some of them you have to weaken up to a point. Some of them, the weaker guys, you can just grab them by the face and smush them like a...
My favorite move, by the way, so far.
Yeah, you just saw that one. But, of course, as the monsters get nastier, you'll start to use the Chaos Eater more. That's his big sword with all the faces on it. And the Chaos Eater is your primary weapon. What happens is, as you're killing, you start to build up chaos, and you can unleash the Chaos form, which turns you into a fiery, demonic, beast of just pure chaos and rage, and that only lasts for a short time, but that sword levels up throughout the game, so it constantly gets stronger, and it also has some slots that you can enhance all your weapons with they have enhancement slots, and as you kill creatures you can find enhancements, you can upgrade your enhancements, and you're not stuck with one choice. It's like, as you might try out an ice enhancement or like a plague one or whatever. And depending on what part of the game you're at, you'll probably want to swap those out. So you like I said, you have your sword, you get a gun, you get some really huge weapons like big guns, a demon one and an angel one that are pick up and drop. Like you can't carry them with you throughout the whole game. They just have some ammo and just some fun sequences where you use those. You have a scythe, death scythe that you get at some point. And you get these big, huge gauntlets. War has one big gauntlet that he kind of uses to block as his shield arm. Later on in the game, you'll actually have two, and you can just beat things down with your bare hands. And it also makes him stronger, too. So barriers that you couldn't get through earlier on, you'll be able to smash down.
Now, you mentioned that there's a lot of interaction with the environment. How much of a sandbox environment is this? Because there seemed to be a bit of an exploration aspect to it as well, not just, grabbing guys and just swinging them over like clubs and smashing them into the ground.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, we tried. There's a good mix of like open areas to explore, and then those are sort of like connecting what we call the dungeon areas, which are more like focused puzzle and combat stuff. They have a boss, typical like dungeon stuff. But in between those, there's like the overworld, and that you unlock slowly over time. And there is quite a bit of exploration there. It is structured more like an adventure game, though. So, like, early on, there's not that many places you can go or do. But as you get new abilities, you start to go like, oh, now I can glide. Maybe I could get across to that rooftop that I can, like I couldn't get there before. And so as the game progresses, the game opens up to you. And you can always go back. You can always explore areas you've already thought you finished. Maybe you missed something. There's lots of secrets scattered around. And so you will be exploring quite a bit. You can swim, you can climb, you can swing. There's a lot of stuff we haven't really showed because we keep showing the combat stuff. It's so big and over the top, people like to see it. But there really is quite a bit of exploration, as you mentioned. And it's actually one of the more fun parts of the game for me. I just like gliding around and looking for stuff. So.
It was cool. I went down into I think it was a underground cavern, and you could see there was terrain that you could actually grab onto the ceiling and actually pull yourself across this gap to get to to collect souls. I thought that was very cool.
Right. So souls are the currency in our game. They you couldn't run around and like collect money off demons and like buy weapons from a merchant. So we actually have a demon early on that introduces himself to you. He's a collector of souls, and he'll trade you things for these souls. So all throughout the game, he appears in each area of the game, and in each area he has something a little different in his inventory of stuff. So you always want to check back and spend your souls. You upgrade abilities, buy new weapons, stuff like that. So he's a pretty fun character as well.
How long do you think it would take an average gamer probably to get through this game? How long in terms of gameplay?
We've been clocking it, I would say somewhere between like 16 or 20 hours, depending on how good you are with puzzles and stuff like that. Usually the puzzles are what stun people, oddly enough. And it is an adventure game, so it's kind of hard for us to gauge because we blow through it all the time. We know where everything is, But we're thinking it'll probably take close to 20 hours.
Is there going to be a multiplayer feature?
Single player only.
All right, maybe possibly in the future get to bash heads in co-op, maybe.
That'd be awesome. 4 horsemen, baby, co-op. You know how cool that would be? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think that's something to work on for the sequel.
Buy the first game, yeah.
Joe, Matt, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Best of luck with the game. It's awesome. Darksiders, check it out, January 2010.